Hello everyone, this is Gleb Bakhmutov. In a previous video, I have shown how to crawl local pages using Cypress test and how to visit every local URL that you find to make sure that every page works and loads. There was one teeny problem with the way we've written the test. Notice that on the first page we find two links, about and table of service or terms of service.html. So we put those things in the queue. Then we visit about, and then we find another link to terms of service. But this link doesn't use HTML, instead it just goes to /TOS. So now in the queue we have tos.html and TOS. So we literally have the same URL, we just don't know that it's the same URL. So when we visit tos.html, it gets redirected, and we visit the terms of service, right? But under the URL, but then we have to visit it again. So how do we avoid the situation where there are duplicate anchor links pointing to the same resource just in different ways? Well, we can use cy.request command, and we can resolve and look at the final result URL to make sure that we detect that these two URLs are the same. So here's how we can update our test. First, I'm gonna copy and save it under spec2. So we have two different spec files, and we don't need this. And here I'm gonna click on spec2, and right now it works exactly the same way. Resolve. Okay, so right here, when we collected all the local URLs, we filtered all external ones, and we start filtering the URLs to see if we visited them or if it's already been queued up. So right here, we want to separate this. So first we found the local URLs. Now let's find something that we can call, let's say, redirected, right? This will be all the links, either the link we get here or the resolved redirected URL where it leads us. Okay, so if you want to find it, we'll take all the local URLs, and for each, okay, we will run cy.request. And in this case, we'll pass it a URL, and let's just see what happens. Okay, and after that, we'll just set, for now, redirected, push URL. And we'll take all redirected, and we're gonna filter, and we'll say after everything filtered, we will take a look at this. Okay, so notice, because I'm using cy.then, I want to run other things after that. So the filtered will be redirected, URLs filtered, and then we'll push everything from the filtered. And right now they'll be the same, okay? So notice what happens right now, right? So we have these extra request commands in the log. So we got two links, and then we have two requests, right? To the about and terms of service.html. And then we say found two links to visit. So all Cypress chain commands, right? Like cy.request runs a couple times, then cy.then executes after cy.request finish, cy.log executes inside, then we push to visit, and after all that, there's another .then, and only then, pun intended, we visit the URL, okay? And we can even make it slightly, I would say, clearer, right? Right here. We can move it right here, okay? And it should act the same way because it's all the same chain of commands. So here's something what we want to see right here. So this first URL to the about page, okay, if we open the DevTools, okay, so if I click on the first request, right, it yields, the body, the headers, the status 200. If we look at table of service, it yields the same properties, but it also logs that it has two redirects, right? So first it redirects probably to, I don't even know, right? This is what it requested, and then it response header was location TOS, and then we requested with TOS. Okay, so we need to get the actual result URL, and unfortunately, right, we don't know how to get it, right? It's not like it prints it right here when we click on it. right? It prints the request, but it doesn't yield the final URL. It just yields the contents of a page. So here's where a secret is, right? Instead of just relying on what is logged in the DevTools, print the full object from site request. Right? So we'll say console log for now. Okay. So notice we actually get the full object from each request. So this is a request to the about URL. And notice that now we have more information. So site request logs some information to a console when we click on it, but it yields the full thing. And here we have the body, the duration, headers, status, and all request responses, right? And in this object, you can see, where we were redirected, right, and so on. And if we look at the same object for the second request, which will be our terms of service.html, it now has two objects in all request responses, right? One shows where it was redirected originally, and then the final URL loaded. So this is the URL we need. This is how it happens. And let's see something else. Do we have anything else here? Yes. So if it was redirected, there is a redirects property. Okay. So this is the flag to us that this URL is not what it seems. So here's what we'll do. We'll say it's redirects. Okay. And let's just bring them, right? And right now this will fail, but don't worry about that. So notice what happens, right? On the first request, there are no redirects, but its property in the command automatically tries to get those, right? And tries to assert those existence, just like cy.get tries to assert that the object exists. So we need to do the same thing because it's optional. Redirects might not exist. And okay, let's just do this now. Okay, so sometimes redirects is undefined, but if there was a redirect, there's an array. And now we know what to do. So if there are redirects, we'll do one thing, else we'll do another thing. Okay, so what do we have? Well, we have the last item in that URL is the final URL. So here's what we'll do. We'll say URL. Actually, let's just first split it. So we'll use last from Lodash, right? And we'll split it. Notice it's a string and there is a status, right? Space and then URL. So we'll say split and take the second part of an array, which will be just the URL. So URL equals, and let's just remove it. Get it? If we get redirects, then we get the last record, right? And we split it, and that's the final URL. Okay, it's almost good, but notice that redirects returns the full URL, including the domain, the host name, the protocol, and so on. So we don't need that. So we'll say, okay, parse equals new URL, and URL equals parse, and we just need the path name, right? And let's see what happens now. Request found two new links, and now notice that the link it found, right? So it found this link, but after it requested it, it found the direct, and now it's just the path name /TOS, and so we never have duplicates. I don't like all this extra logging that goes on, so let's say log false. We don't need its log false. Let's see now. Perfect. So we visit the page, get two links, and after we check the redirects, we only have two links to visit, which is this line. We push them, right, to the queue, and then we call visit next URL. So this is how we check each URL before we add it to the queue to make sure we don't visit the same resource, which is just referred to by different href attributes.